What?
We're not addressing either the Latina
What?
and the relationship or what the meaning of feminism means to us.
So you are queuing up my next question, ma'am, so thank you. I might get you a chair right up here next to me. Should be my backup host of this panel. When it comes to young women of color, for decades there has been this sense that feminism, wink wink, is white women. And for women of color, like, that's a completely different movement. And in fact, history has a long list of ways in which feminists have actually sort of ignored the issues of women of color until they're often very publicly pushed to sort of kind of unwillingly embrace it. Have you seen a change? I mean, there was a young woman of color who's going to come out later for the final keynote, and she's, because she's young, we all sort of like sprung on her to ask her questions backstage. What are you seeing for young women of color around not just this phrase, but around how they think about opportunities for women of color today?
Well, you know, I do think that there is this reality that feminism can be perceived as something that still, in many ways, preferences the sort of condition and prioritizes the condition and the realities that white women face, right? And so there is sort of another sort of take at this idea of feminism, where a lot of women of color, particularly Black women, might call themselves womanist rather than feminist, because womanist is seen as a more intersectional interpretation of the word, where you would not only look at this issue of gender, but you'd also look at gender intersected with race. It's much like how women of color particularly might describe, you know, reproductive justice as something that we're concerned with over and above just a specific focus on reproductive rights, because we see that as a broader term, not only having concern about access to abortion, but also understanding that being able to make the choice that you want children and that you want to be able to raise children in safe communities and not necessarily be abused by police and poverty and all those other challenges that we face is a broader interpretation of being able to have control over your reproductive rights, right? And so there are these situations where women of color examine these issues that are very gender specific, but examine it from an intersectional lens, which ultimately results in perhaps different phraseology that we use. But at the end of the day, I think one of the things that we can all say that we have in common is that we do understand that women across the racial spectrum, across the ethnic spectrum, face very, very distinct challenges in this culture. And we understand that we need to, as women, be able to address those issues specifically in order to overcome them.